Hi everyone, thank you for coming. Very excited to be back home. This is where I grew up. However, I've been away for a decade, but I'm so glad to be back here and talk about what I've been up to in the last few years, and especially focusing on the last 2 years that I've been the co-founder and partner at Sustainable Food Ventures. And as already mentioned, we invest in early stage future of food startups. We're a venture firm that backs companies as early as when they just have an idea, not even a prototype and not even a team, to as late as maybe seed stage. Usually Series A is the phase that we don't invest in. However, we're much earlier down the line. And about 50% of the time, we're the very first money into the company. When we talk about sustainable food ventures and also the general alternative protein space, there are really 3 different technologies that the space is investing in and focusing in. So everyone here is probably familiar with plant-based options, and we have had presentations beforehand about plant-based foods and innovations. However, there are 2 other technologies that are very active at the moment as well. So under fermentation, you have biomass fermentation, precision fermentation, and also fungi and mycelium. So for example, Libre Foods, that was here earlier today, they're one of our companies from the precision fermentation, well, not precision fermentation, but from the fungi side of things. And then we have ProProtein, who is somewhere in this room as well and presenting later in the day. They are the precision fermentation company. And then when it comes to cultured or cell-based or maybe lab-grown meat is a term that people know more. So that is the technology where you use basically the cells of the animal to produce meat. So that's what I did earlier with Finless in California, and that's the area that I'm investing in. So maybe an interesting fact, so if plants are plants and precision fermentation is really the same ingredients that you have in the traditional meat and dairy, then with cultured or cell-based, if you are allergic to fish, you cannot eat cell-based fish because it's the same cells, just produced outside of the animal in a much more sustainable way. So in the last 2 years, we've made 50 investments, and 2 of them are here in Estonia and also in this room. And 1 is in Spain and also in this room. We're very global, so we have invested in all different continents except 1. We're present in 20 different countries, and we believe very strongly in local winners. We really believe that innovation is everywhere. We believe that the future is already here. It's just not yet distributed evenly. It's just a matter of time. When are we going to have the biggest plant-based dairy companies here in Baltics, as we just heard from the previous speaker? So it's only a question of time, not a question of if. This is our portfolio. This is just to show that there are 50 companies and that we focus on all the different type of products. There are dairy products, there are seafood products, there are meat products, there's even cell-based coffee and chocolate. So there is all sorts of things in our portfolio. They're usually very, very early. So the longest we've been with our company is 2 years. Venture investment traditionally follows their companies 10 to 12 years, sometimes 13. And our company that is furthest down the fundraising is Hoxton Farms. They're based in the UK. They make cell-based fat, and they just successfully completed their Series A fundraise. 22 million is what they managed to raise in this ecosystem. But why do we do this, and why do other investors, in addition to us, do this and focus on this specific alternative proteins area? So I think we all know, but sometimes it's good to repeat that in the next few decades, to feed the whole population that is going to be present here on this planet together with us, we need to produce 60% more food. And 60% just seems like a number, but if you put it into context, in the next 40 years, we have to produce as much food as we produced in the last 8,000 years. So basically when the ice melted away from Estonia 10,000 years ago, some people arrived here, they started making food, and now up to today, all that food we have to produce in the next 40 years. And there are different numbers, but I've gone with these ones. They depends on what you look into the sector, but basically 50% of the emissions in greenhouse gases that, of course, then make climate change happen, affect this area. And this is just today. So imagine if we went 60% more with our current technologies. Currently, some of us live in a way that we have 2 planets to produce resources with. If we continue that with the 60% increase, we need another 2 planets. So if you have coordinates to like where we can go and do that, I'd be the first one to want that information. However, there's a much more realistic and tasty and affordable solution, which is turning into alternatives, turning into plant-based, fermentation, and cell-based technologies. Let's look what's happened in the last decade, basically. So in early 2010, we really didn't see almost any investments into this space, into these three different specific technologies. Now, last year alone, $5 billion was invested into the space. These investments take into account private investments, so also VC investments, but also private equity, government funds, loans, so all type of money that could go into the companies. This is what has happened. And I personally think that 2019 was a pivotal year for this space, because that's when Beyond Meat IPO'd. Be the stocks now what they are. I mean, all stocks are red. Most of them are red at the moment. We just need to see which one is less red. But back in 2019, Beyond Meat's IPO was the most successful IPO of this century. So if we lived in 2019 and we're looking at what companies went to the IPO market, Beyond Meat was by far the most successful one. And I think your regular investors or people who trade stocks, they could not foresee that an alternative meat company, a plant-based meat company, could be the company that was the most successful in the last 19 years. So I think that's what triggered the investments, 3 times increase in 2020, and then another 1.5 increase in 2021. However, every new technology goes through a hype cycle, which means that when something is triggered in terms of a new innovation, everyone gets super excited and like thinks like, okay, this is gonna save the world like tomorrow or yesterday, right? They're just very, very excited about this. And this is the same that internet went through. Like everyone were doing like web pages and things like that, and money was flowing into that area until the bubble burst. And then people were like, oh yeah, internet is never gonna work. I don't even know why we're doing this. And then look at us now. I mean, most of you are still listening to me, but some of them are using the internet on their phone, right? So it is definitely a thing. And the same has been with alternative energies. I'll show a graph in a second, but it is normal to go through this cycle. And about here, a lot of negative press starts coming around. We'll talk about that in a moment. But once we've been through the valley of death or the throe of disillusionment, we start going back on the growth cycle, and we start seeing the companies that will really define not the next few years, but centuries of our lifetime. Not our lifetime, maybe, maybe not, but centuries to the future. Where are we today with the investments? As you can see, this is data from the first 3 quarters. So I don't have the Q4 because it's happening at the moment. So we can look at the information in maybe 3 months and make more corrections. But I think we're not going to invest another 10 billion in this quarter. So we've seen 2 billion, a bit more than 2 billion in this quarter thus far. However, if we look at the venture space in general and compare the first 3 months to the next 3 months of this year, so Q1 to Q2, we see that the whole venture investment space, investments decreased by 23%. The food investment decreased by 21%, and investments to the alternative protein space decreased only by 9%. So we are in a sector that is much more interesting and a bit more protected than the rest of the investments in the whole in this whole wide world. We can evaluate this X probably in the end of the year to know what the fall was. So to put it into context, this graph is 2 years old, so I'm pretty sure alternative options have moved up and down. I'll show you in the next graph, but I wanted to show you that we have alternative energies here on the slope. And my favorite example is that in early 1990s, Germany had no alternative energy sources. Everything ran on like fossil fuels and other technologies that are not renewables. This year, some days, Germany runs 100% on renewable energies, and that's just in mere 20 years. I think that we are here today. So I think 2021, based on the investments that went to this space, was the peak of inflated expectations. We see some negative press already about this area, people not being happy with the potential and the results so far. But this is really the time to buckle down, build what you know has been working, and really focus. So if this is a time to really like hype everything up, this is the time to build and find your way through the valley of death. When it will arrive, I don't think it will take another 8 years to do this. So alternative energies did the whole curve in 20 years in Germany's example. I think it will be faster. I think the bottom will arrive faster. And then it's about the companies who are going to build through that phase, who are going to reach the plateau of productivity. I think some of the companies are here in this room. I think some of the companies are still not yet even born, the ones that are going to make our life livable for the next hundreds and hundreds of years. Just quickly, some positive signals from this year. The Dutch government has invested 60 million to develop cultured meat. I think one of the things that really stirred the whole ecosystem was when China put cultured meat and plant-based eggs into their 5-year plan. So if China is doing and planning it, I mean, everyone woke up and they're like, oh my God, we should do it too. So, and the last, also, as Biden said, you know, COVID is over. And then Biden said that cultured meat is going to be in their biotech and innovation strategy. So let's see what happens on that end. But the signals are there. There are many, many more. These are just the ones that I picked out for today. And where I see the opportunities for the future, the public sector, I really hope that we're able to regulate and fund this space equally. My favorite example is from 2019 when the US invested 25 million to alternative proteins and 425 million to traditional industry. There's almost a 20x difference there. So when we get to that to level up, I think there's going to be a real increase in terms of products consumed from the alternative protein sites, because the price of them will be just so much lower than what we have at the moment for traditional products. And private sectors, of course, it's always about 3 things for the consumer. It's about taste, taste, and taste. So let's nail that down really well. And then if you're a regular, if you're a regular consumer, consume and also invest in more alternatives. And now, as the very last slide, this is my absolute favorite. If you are curious about climate change, if you're curious about impact, investments in the space, focusing in the space, it really is alternative proteins that make the change. You can invest in electricity to make it more greener, you can fly less, you can build less, you can do less of all sorts of things, but what you can do every day is you can just consume more plant-based and other alternatives to enjoy this world now and in the future. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm here the whole day.
Thank you so much for your amazing presentation. I wish there were more people like you. And I hope the plateau of productivity will come as soon as possible. Okay, so I will check workshop. Yep, we have questions. What are the criteria for Baltic startups to access the support of sustainable food ventures?
Thank you for the question. So I don't think there's a difference between Baltic or an entrepreneur in Lagos, Nigeria that we have invested in, or in Cape Town, or in New Zealand, or here in Tallinn. I don't think there's any country-based criteria, it's always about three things. It's about the team that is building it, it's about what they're building, and it's about the market they're going after. So there are different ways to fund your startup, but in order to take venture capital, which is like rocket fuel, like literally you take that rocket fuel and you either keep taking it or you just like blow yourself up even before you make it to the stratosphere. So when you want to raise venture capital, which is just one form of investment, you need to go after those markets that will position for you to be $1 billion company in the next decade. So this is what really venture capitals are looking at, that you have the potential to go after for a market that is worth many, many billions with a B then, or even better if it's with a trillion. But you know, we invest on both sides. But it's hard because when you have a niche market, you don't know whether in 5 years or 10 years, if it's today a couple of $100 million, will it be $1 billion market? So that's a bit of a gray area, but we look at market, we look at what you're building, and that you have the skills to do that. And we at Sustainable Food Ventures, we have a specific target or a specific thing we look at. We invest in missionaries over mercenaries, which means we really go into why you are doing this. And my favorite question is, many favorites today, but favorite is, if money was not a question, what would you be building in this world? And if it's still the same thing, go for it, do it. But if it's something else, why are you doing what you're doing?
Okay, thanks. I hope it helped. Last question. Classical agriculture companies are seen often as evil. Are they also often main investors within your portfolio?
So our portfolio is very, very early, and we do have investors that are from the traditional side, some of them. So you see traditionals either doing internal innovation or deciding to buy in innovation, but they sometimes prefer to enter the space a bit later, in later stages. So it really depends on the strategicals. I encourage people to work with them because they've been there, done that in such a huge scale that as a small startup, you will always benefit from their insight. Just make sure they don't take control over everything, but that's about details and negotiating contracts.
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks for the great answers.